Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, councillors, and members of the public, members of the press. Thank you for coming tonight. Before we move on with this evening's cabinet, I just wanted to draw everyone's attention to the fact that I've instructed the front of the Civic to be lit up in purple tonight as part of the Holocaust Memorial Day commemorations. And today's Holocaust Memorial Day, and I would like to take a minute's silence so that everybody in this chamber can remember the millions of Jewish people that died in the Second World War as part of the Holocaust and subsequent genocides, and to think about all of the Jewish diaspora that suffered from that massacre. And so I wondered if councillors and if members of the public feel able to and would like to, if we could all stand for a minute's silence, please. So, moving to the Cabinet agenda, do we have any apologies for absence? We do. Declarations of interest on. I'd like to remind the opposition that even though you're not voting members of the Cabinet, if any of you have HCS directorships, and that may be of interest in the public.
Sorry, do I have to declare the usual thing that I declare?
You do indeed.
Well, I declare it, thank you.
Just because we have a slightly more packed auditorium tonight, Councillor Durkin, would you be kind enough to tell us what your interest is in, please?
Okay, I have a pecuniary interest as a non-executive director of HTS, I think.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Vince?
Again, I'm not sure it's relevant, but I've just declared interest. I know there's a mention of Tricks claims in one of the reports that's presented to Cabinet tonight, so I work for Tricks claims.
Thank you very much indeed. Okay, that being apologies for some declaration of interest, sorry. And we move to minutes of the previous Cabinet meeting, pages 4 to 10 of the pack. We agree that they are on the record. Agreed. Sign them. Are there any matters arising for those minutes? None, okay. Go to item 5, written questions from the public. We have a number, and the first is from Mr. Mike Patrick to Councillor Simon Carter, photo holder for housing. Mr. Patrick, would you like to come up to the microphone and ask your question?
I researched on Harlow Council's website that Harlow needs test for delivering Harlow's housing need only showed up to 2018. It showed over a 3-year period that to 2018 that 1,008 homes were built, homes were needed, 846 were built. showing an 84% delivery on homes. I researched the national government's data and found that the 2021 statistics showed that Harlow had 366 applicants on this housing needs register. Harlow, like any other council, is not anywhere near close to supplying its housing need. How are the statistics remotely accurate?
Thank you, Mr. Patrick. Councillor Carter, would you like to respond, please?
Thank you. Thank you for your question, Mr. Patrick. The government requires each local planning authority to provide information known as the housing delivery test to ensure that sufficient homes are built to meet the relevant authority's housing need. The housing need that this is tested against is known as the standard method. And it's important to note that whilst the standard method comprises many elements, including projected household growth and affordability, it does not, however, measure an assessment against the council's housing register. For the years quoted, 2015 to 18, the council did not meet the target set by the government's housing delivery test, and as such, Harlow was required to produce a housing delivery action plan and ensure that in the following 5 years the number of homes delivered were 20% above those required by the council. In the years since 2018, the number of homes completed in Harlow has met the government's target set by the standard method. Therefore, a new action plan is not required. The council has very recently received the results of the latest housing delivery test, which shows that Harlow provided 208% of its requirement and consequently will not be sanctioned. Turning to the future, the number of homes required by the council has been set by the adoption of the Harlow Local Development Plan at 9,200 dwellings for the period 2011-2033. This target is above that based on the objectively assessed housing need, which is 7,400 dwellings. The council is therefore expected to meet the required housing delivery over the next 5 years.
Thank you, Councillor Carter. Mr. Patrick, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, I do. Thank you. Question referenced the 2012 council rent settlement backlog repairs debt. Harlow's debt was over £300 million. There are calls to revisit this settlement as it was possible in the settlement agreement. Can you please tell me, owing to a local 1% cut in rental income over 4 years and more homes sold through the rent to buy, is Harlow's rental income at present less than predicted in the 2012 30-year plan?
Councillor Carter.
Thank you, Chair. With respect, that's a fairly technical question going back 10 years. I think we might need a bit of time to research that.
Yeah.
If you have that, that'll be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Patrick, for your questions. Question 2 is from Mr. Nicholas Taylor to Councillor Nicky Hurst. Mr. Taylor.
Yes, good evening. On the 1st of May 2019, the then leader of the council had asked residents for suggestions as to where more off-street parking could be constructed within the housing estates. He was asked at full council on the 28th of January 2021 about the progress being made to create these spaces. He responded by saying that 6 sites have been given priority, these being 12 spaces at Shorebridge, 15 at Rawley Hook, 6 at Peartree Mead, 15 in Spinal Mead, and an unspecified number in Bishopfield, subject to planning permission, make spaces in 5 acres and Barmead. Other sites, he said, will be given to a robust assessment, and it was hoped to complete the sites being given priority in 2021-22. My question is, can you tell me how many of these sites identified as long ago as 2019 have been completed, and what progress has been made in carrying out the robust assessment of other sites?
Councillor Hurst.
Thank you for your question. Parking schemes that were identified in 2019 are progressing and due to be concluded on the 31st of March 2022. We're committed in delivering a long-term parking solutions in many estates where possible, and we're making an announcement and consulting on those proposals in due course.
Mr Taylor, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, I do. I note in response that you say that this will be concluded. Does that mean that they will be built?
Councillor Close.
There is areas that will be concluded this year, but I'll have to come back to you because it falls under the remit of housing, but I will get back to you with some dates in writing.
Thank you.
And I believe, Mr Taylor, you have a question from me.
I do, yeah. At the Cabinet meeting held on the 27th of February 2020, the then leader of the council was asked about the future of Acacia House. He responded by saying that the council was in discussion with the building's owner, but for commercial reasons was unable to say any more. Here we are, nearly 2 years have elapsed since then. Can you tell me what progress, if any, has been made to get this property back into use?
Thank you. I can confirm that Harlow Council is currently in discussions with the owners of Acacia House about the purchase of the site by the council to enable its redevelopment. These discussions are ongoing and I'm unable to say more at the moment, but I do expect this to have been brought to a conclusion by the end of April.
Thank you very much.
Okay, question 4 from Mr Alan Leverett to Councillor Alistair Gunn, portfolio holder for governance. Mr Leverett, question.
Good evening, councillors. Thank you. I was interested to see in a local newspaper recently that Epping Forest District Council intended to build a multi-storey car park on its car park just in the high street of Epping, which not only would see a big increase in the number of parking spaces, but also include 50 electric car charging points. This work is being done to encourage more visitors to Epping. Harlow Council present programmes of getting a handful of electric charging points installed in places other than the town centre will do nothing to attract more visitors to the Harlow town centre. What priority will the council give within the 3-year strategy to increase the number of charging points in the town centre and across the town? And has the council set a target for the number of spaces that will be provided during this period?
Thank you, Mr Leverett. Councillor Gunn.
Thank you. The Council recognises the importance of charging facilities for electric vehicles, and while plug-in hybrid, battery electric, range extended electric or fuel cell electric cars currently comprise some 3% of the fleet nationally, and with pure electric vehicles being a smaller proportion, it is aware of the forthcoming prohibition of sales on internal combustion engine cars in 2030 and expects the market to react to that, and the proportion of electric vehicles in the fleet to rise quickly as a result. This understanding will be reflected in the Council's forthcoming overarching climate change strategy and is already reflected in a range of recently adopted planning policies. Furthermore, the Council is seeking to establish a town EV charge point policy, which an Office of Working Group will develop under the oversight of a cross-party member steering group. Regarding provision for town centre users, the Council's position may contrast with that of other authorities, who may directly control town centre parking provision and have the opportunity to make provision during redevelopment. At present, parking provision in Harlow's town centre is largely privately owned, meaning that historically the Council has had limited means of directly influencing provision. However, it has engaged with owners regarding their plans, and there has been positive reaction in some quarters. The Council looks forward to learning about more specific proposals in the near future. There will of course be very substantial development opportunities arising in the forthcoming regeneration of the town centre, and naturally the Council will apply its policy to ensure that new developments have appropriate provision for electric vehicle parking. The Council will also be contributing to shifting the emphasis away from bus and motorised transport through its work with HGGT on active transport corridors, which will see a massive improvement in active transport infrastructure and of public transport. This includes plans to redevelop Harlow's unique cycle track network. The Council owns a number of car parks that serve satellite shopping centres rather than the town centre, as well as the Green Flag awarded town park, and has approved plans to begin to install charging points in these areas. The Council will be keeping the position under review and recognises that there will be a growing need for electric vehicle charging points in the years ahead.
Thank you, Councillor Gunn. Mr Leverett, do you have a supplementary question?
I do, yeah, and thank you for that reply. In relation to your reply, Electric car owners face a postcode lottery, as only 21 councils at the moment are offering free charging points, one of them being Stevenage, by the way. Is the council going to offer those using the electric car points free or even reasonable rate of charging for the electric vehicles in the town? And will this also include the ability to fast charge?
Councillor Gunn.
I'm afraid there's no plan I can refer to as yet. It's all rather premature, I'm afraid, but I would note that a programme for delivering the installation of electric vehicle charging points across Harlow was identified as one of the strategic outcomes in the corporate strategy agreed just last month. So this is very much on our radar, and I'm pleased to say that the member steering group, cross-party, will be meeting, I believe it's next week now, to begin to do the work to provide answers to those very important questions.
Thank you. I take note of what's said. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. We have a fifth question from Mr. John Wright to Councillor Nicky Pearce. Mr. Wright.
Good evening, councillors.
Press the button.
Good evening, councillors. As a resident of Waterhouse Moor, I have become increasingly aware of the problems arising from the dropping off and collection of pupils from St Mark's and William Martin schools. The increase in parental car driving to and from school has meant that Waterhouse Moor, in common with other residential areas near to schools, is now experiencing twice daily irresponsible parking issues, such as parking on pavements and across cycle paths. The parking partnership proposal will no doubt solve the problems being experienced outside both schools, but I'm afraid it will only move the problem to other residential areas. The reopening of the car park opposite William Martin will help to reduce the problems there and shines as a good example of what could be done at St Mark's. I would ask why Harlow Council have not considered a more permanent solution, that is, to allow the Green Wedge area of land opposite St Mark's School to be used as a dropping off and collection point between 0800 and 0900 hours and 1500 to 1600 hours. The provision of a lockable gate would enable the school to provide access to this safe area only at the prescribed times, to be kept locked at all other times to prevent illicit parking and use.
Councillor Pearce.
Thank you for your question. We fully understand the challenges of parking across the town, and particularly around schools, and the knock-on impact on students' safety around the actual schools. The land that Mr. Wright has identified is a designated green wedge under Policy 5 of the 2020 local plan, and therefore the land cannot be used in any such solution. In it is not the case that Harlow Council is deciding not to change the use of this land is Policy 5 of legal binding on 2020 local plan. I understand it is not a response that Mr. Wright may want and would be looking for, but we are unable to change this policy and would not allow such parking in that area.
Mr. Wright, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, I do. I was obviously aware it was green wedge, but perhaps wrongly I believe that the council had some discretionary powers with regard to these areas, and on such a serious matter that impacts on not only residents but road users, pupils and parents, I thought it was perhaps something that they could use those delegated powers. I was obviously wrong in that, but I do note from the reply that the local plan, and I understand that is to be reviewed at the end of this year or the beginning of next year, is this area of green wedge an area that at that time could be considered as something that could be used for car parking in the future to alleviate the ever-growing problems that we are experiencing in that area.
Councillor Pearce.
So obviously under the local plan at the moment, section 5, you couldn't do that. It would be wrong for me to make a decision and say anything at cabinet tonight, because this would need to be discussed at a later date. So it would be something that we can come back to you at a later date with.
But it is possible in the review that it could be considered.
It could be there for consideration at a later date in the review.
Thank you very much.
Okay, moving on to item 8, forward work plan on pages 11 to 21. Typically just promoting, are there any questions on the forward work plans? Councillor Durban?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I've got 3 questions, if I may, please. The first one is particularly on page 16, which is 10131556, which is the planned report due on the 24th of March around new house building. Can I have assurances from the Cabinet member responsible for this document that actually we're talking about new council house building and not private house building? I was also very interested in the question that was asked earlier on about the future of the Acacia House site, and I'm mindful that you said we should have a decision in April. I'm hoping it's this April rather than another April, but how does that square when this report is going to be produced in March? And will the house building also, is this now not including the post office car park, which was identified for council houses, but you now want to, I'm told, bring back your Perrins pots to make it a garden?
It's April this year.
Thank you.
In answer to that first question, and I'm glad you like to bring up those pots that you voted for.
I know we've still got them somewhere.
Councillor Swords, if you'd like to take the substantial parts of that question, several through response.
Yes, I presume that's all 3 questions then. The new build programme that you referenced will be coming in March. I'm afraid I don't understand the question you asked about whether it's new housing or
Council, is it council housing?
Yes.
Excellent, that's all I need.
Okay, great. The Acacia House question you referenced, I think Councillor Perrin's response said concluded by the end of April, which means it is likely to be before that. And in terms of Post Office Road, as I think pointed out to you in the October Cabinet, I'm not sure where you get the reference of house building from. There has been a plan to build any homes on the Post Office Road site, nor did that master plan designate any use for it. It just simply, as I think I said, looking back 11 times that night, identified some opportunity areas, and that being one of them.
Thank you very much. Do you have any
Yes, my
questions?
second question is in relation to policy 1012714, which is on page 17, which is the open space supplement. And I'm just asking for reassurance that the open space supplement is not the Conservatives' opportunity to build the world-class cycle track that you keep committing to, but you don't own the current cycle track. And can we have assurances that the open space supplement document will now protect the green spaces, sorry John, he's gone anyway, doesn't matter, regarding protecting it from any future building?
As you mentioned, and perhaps you can pick up in the October Cabinet, this is a supplementary planning document. I'm sure you're familiar with that term now. So it wouldn't take away from such things. You may have seen the draft from memory already. In terms of the cycle tracks, I'm actually delighted to give you an opportunity to tell you that we're going to have a fantastic cycle track network built across the town. In fact, I'm sure you're probably familiar with the LC WIP document on which you would have seen previously, which set out many of the ambitions. But further announcements on the cycle tracks will be made in due course. But I hope that you can take great courage in the fact that we are delivering on our pledges, such as council tax, which you told us we wouldn't do many times, and therefore you can take the same spirit with the cycle tracks too.
So my third and final question, my third and final question, Chair, is my traditional one, which I feel I have to ask every particular time, which is in relation to report 1013 43 to 49, which is page 19. I've already made my declaration. Could the portfolio holder responsible for this report offer me some assurances that HTS have been offered the opportunity to bid for this building opportunity? Anybody?
Sorry, could you just refresh my memory of which particular item it is? Is it 1013
Let me remind you, Simon, it is 1013 and then it's 43 to 49, which you'll see on your own report on page 19.
As it says in the title, it's a contract award. It's the award of a contract. Therefore, it will have gone out to tender, and HTS will be free to tender just like anybody else.
Okay. Thank you, Simon. I'm not sure if it's the acoustics, but I think you didn't hear what I said. Can you reassure me that HTS were asked and given the opportunity to bid for those contracts by the council?
I couldn't possibly comment.
Well, who can then?
I'm sorry?
If you can't comment as the cabinet member for housing, is there someone else who might be able to?
Nobody can comment on it because it's commercially sensitive.
It's a tender process.
Commercially sensitive?
Yes,
It is indeed. You haven't had an answer to your question. They would have been invited to tender for it. As to who has tendered for it, we are not at liberty to say because it's commercially sensitive. Any more further questions on the forward work plan? Okay, thank you very much. Now we're going to take items 9 through to 15, so that's all the financial papers. That's the medium-term financial strategy, the general fund budget, housing revenue account business plan, housing revenue account budget, capital and treasury report, capital programmes for 2021-22 to 23-24, and the treasury management statement for 21-22 mid-year review. All of those papers are found between pages 22 and 281 of the pack. I'm going to take them on block. So we will take our questions on block and then we'll take comments on block at the end as well. Can I see a proposer for those papers, please? Thank you, Councillor Leppard. Can I see a second for those?
Sure.
Thank you, Councillor Carter. Are there any questions on these papers? Councillor Danvers.
I have a few, Chair, if you indulge me.
First
of all, sorry.
Because you have a few, how would you prefer to take it? Would you
One by
prefer
one, yes, if that's all right.
Fine.
Okay. First of all, could you generally outline the justification for not increasing the council tax by 2% a year for the next 3 years?
Yes, we've run through the numbers on the MTFS, and just as your administration many years back, with a balanced MTFS, decided not to increase council tax, we are convinced and we're satisfied that we don't need to increase it, and we have a balanced budget.
Thank you very much. And do you have a second question, Councillor?
Putting the medium-term finance in jeopardy, can the administration justify the drawing down of reserves to pay a bribe to the Harlow electorate?
I disagree with you philosophically. I think you're wrong factually. There is no bribe. In fact, we are changing the way we treat our taxpayers. No longer are we looking at them as cash cows to be exploited. Government does not have money. Money comes from the people. And governments or administrations are judged by how much they take and how they spend that money. For too long, the previous administration took too much and gave so little. Had they not done that, we might not have inherited the mess we assumed in May.
Councillor Dennis, do you have another question?
Sorry, What mess? Sorry, that's not one of my questions. But
Okay,
what
would you like
mess?
to ask a
Sorry.
question? Is that a question or not a question, Councillor?
Well, it's a question then.
Thank you.
Sorry, what mess?
The fact that we had to spend months going through the reserves that you had never really administered, the fact that nothing had been built in this town, the fact that the town centre looks like a war zone, and we have had to develop financing for that, I think that constitutes a mess by any reasonable standards.
Do you have another question?
You said finance mess, okay. Using the homes bonus as part of the bribe, money normally paid into the discretionary account, how does this equate with the promise to protect, as you've done so continually since you were elected as the administration in May, to protect the discretionary services in the years to come?
You've actually stolen my thunder there.
So, before you answer that, Councillor Charles is just implementing some responses.
Thank you. I'm grateful for that question. The facts around the Discretionary Services Fund are borne out of the medium-term financial strategy and the General Fund. And the facts are this. As you will know, Councillor Davis, a number of those services that used to sit within the Discretionary Services Fund have moved to core funding. So, for example, that's the Playhouse, that's Pets Corner, that's the Community Safety Team.
Yes, we did do that.
The other aspect to the plan set out today at Cabinet is that if you look at the Discretionary Services Fund, it's projected to hold sufficient funding to sustain that fund for a further 6 years, including FY 22-23. What you will also see in the financial papers, which is set out, I think, very clearly, is that the Discretionary Services Fund forecast at the 31st of March 2022 shows that it will hold in the highest level of a closing balance for the Discretionary Services Fund than at any other point in the last 5 years, standing at almost £3 million.
Councillor Tenants, do you have another
Yes, I don't be left in a very healthy state, but I'm just worried about its future, Chair. Generally, if the failure to increase council tax results in a permanent loss of revenue in the next 3 years of a cumulative £900,000, how can Harlow services be realistically maintained at their present level?
Once again, it seems that our Labour colleagues have trouble with numbers, and it took them over a month and 3 times I had to repeat the amount of actual council tax that Harlow receives. Likewise, you've just made the same mistake. The amount is nowhere near 900,000. We're reliably informed that it will be just under 600,000, which is precisely the amount that Harlow residents would have to pay if you still were in office.
Councillor Tenants, do you have another
I
question?
might not be very good at maths, Chair, but I think 160,000 times 6 is nearer 900. 6 times, because you're losing. Well, you don't understand, because you're losing.
Excuse me.
Sorry, you're losing 160,000 each year. But anyway, you can't add up. That's not my problem. Given your argument and justification for not having a council tax increase of 2%, in terms of this is public, putting people's money at risk and so on, and how can you actually justify an excuse the average rent increase of 1/3 of the people who will be paying council tax will be paying 4% in rent increases?
Thank you, Councillor Tenants. We'll go to Councillor Sun-Cox for the speech.
Sorry, I'm not expecting the question. I didn't quite catch the beginning. Would you mind repeating it?
I'm just interested, I don't mind which member of the administration answers it. How do you equate the hypocrisy of talking about members of the public using public money for council tax, when in fact, and then saying that you therefore want to freeze it, and then you're actually putting up a record increase that certainly under no Labour administration we never went above 4%, but you're actually increasing rents for 1/3 of the same people by 4%. How are you justifying it?
Councillor Carter. I know it's difficult to have to sort of explain these things when they were doing exactly the same, but if we could try, please, and for the purposes.
Yeah. The general fund and the HRA are two separate, legally separated and ring-fenced accounts. You can't move funds either from the general fund to the HRA or vice versa.
I'm not suggesting.
Well, you are. The basic calculation of the rent, as you well know, is laid down by regulation. It's CPI plus 1%. And, I was going to sort of say this later on, but there's nothing we can do about that. But what we can do, as has been announced, we can give the taxpayers' money back to them in the general fund, which has been collected unnecessarily, and they can then use that money for whatever purpose they want. But they are two separate accounts, always have been since 1986 Housing Local Government Act,
Thank you, Councillor Carter.
Just interested in the contradictions of this administration. The sixth question, I gave notice of this to Simon Freeman. I'm not sure whether he's in a position to answer it, to be fair to him, because he said at the time he didn't know if he would get information. But I have, so I'll ask the question technically. How much did a cremation at Harlow Crematorium cost 12 years ago, and how much does it cost now?
Come to Mr. Freeman. Have you had a chance to find the answer?
I only told him on Monday, so I can understand if he hasn't got an answer.
Yeah, no, I haven't got that, but we can provide that in writing.
Thank you very much. Do you have any further questions?
Yes, because I wasn't sure whether I'd get the answer officially, I found out that the increase in the charges has been by 400%. A death tax by any other name. And now tonight a further £50,000 is being demanded of the private company running the crematorium. So in turn, presumably they will put up their prices yet again. So are really the bereaved families of Harlow paying for this council tax cut in part?
Councillor Danvers, so are you saying Mr. Freeman doesn't need to answer your question now because you've got an answer to your own question?
I'm just asking, Chair, how in fact your £50,000 that you're actually putting in your budget in terms of increased income from the private company, when they will go away and put up their charges, I assume again, is this paying, is this administration expecting bereaved families of this town to be paying for this council tax cut?
I understand. I'll ask Councillor Source to answer the question about the private crematorium that's been privatised for over 10 years, which you had the chance to change when you were in administration. Councillor Source.
It was locked in for 30 years, Chair.
Yeah, I'll just say, if you're happy to answer the question, Councillor Danvers. It's set out many times in the reports. I could cite you every paragraph in which it sets out very clearly where the council tax cut and the money for that is coming from. It's quite simple. You charge people too much council tax. We were elected on the promise to give it back to them. We're giving it back to them. In terms of the crematorium, as Councillor Perrins just said, you're in for 9 years and you never change it.
Next question,
That's
Councillor
because we were
Danvers.
locked into a contract for 30 years, so you can't change contracts. The last question, Chair. In a few weeks' time, not next week, in a few weeks' time, the council will be asked to fix the overall council tax. For the last 3 years, the Conservative opposition has voted against this proposal. As we've learned today with the Police Commissioner, and we already know from the County Council, there will be a net increase in the council tax that's levied on the people of Harlow. As the administration, will they be voting for an overall council tax increase at this special council meeting, or will they be leaving it to the opposition?
We will be voting for our budget at that meeting.
And the county council monies?
And
will you be voting for an increase in council tax at that meeting?
We will be voting to put forward our council tax proposals. And we will be naturally moving the precinct. You realise we are the collecting precinct authority.
You're the ones who voted against for the last 3 years.
Yeah.
I've answered your question.
Okay.
You might not like the answer, but
It's just the hypocrisy of the situation, Chair.
it's always amusing to get some hypocrisy from youth councillor Tenants. Are there any further questions? Councillor Vince.
Thank you, Chair. Referring to page 22, which I believe is item 9, what will the earmarked £363,000 estate renewal fund actually pay for, and which estates will be targeted?
Okay, just for ease of reference, for anyone that might be trying to answer your question on the auditorium, councillor, could you reference the report you're talking about, please?
Yeah, it's the medium term. It's the item 9, the medium term financial strategy, page 22 of the document.
Thank you very much. Councillor Lockhart, could you take across the
Yeah, it's a fantastic fund that's going to deliver all sorts of renewal projects across the town, which announcements for which will come out in due course, and I presume you'll be voting to set up the fund.
Thank you, Councillor Vince.
What a non-answer.
Yeah, okay. So on page 45 of the same document, it talks about seeking to maximise the commercial activities of its wholly owned group of companies, HTS, involving access to access new third-party commercial contracts and potential property development opportunities. What if these commercial targets aren't hit?
Thank you, Chair. As the opposition are fully aware, we have embarked on now a 9-month process to establish a new business plan for HTS. As part of that business plan development, there are a range of bits of work that are attached to it, namely looking at its performance indicators, and the Council has given HTS, as part of the business plan development process, clear steer on how we want to build that going forward as part of their 5-year business plan. Of course there will be targets, of course there will be new performance indicators, and of course we're setting out a direction of travel for HTS to venture into pursuing new commercial opportunities. I would rather have thought that the opposition would embrace that approach, something that we have said very clearly in our corporate strategy.
Councillor Vince.
Thank you, Chair. A lot of assumptions of what I think today. Yeah, this is probably a question for Mr. Freeman, but page 45 obviously talks about the concerns about a potential decrease of government funding to Harlow District Council. Can you tell me, please, what the percentage increase in government financing to Harlow District Council has been in the past 12 years?
So the reduction over that period is approximately 70%.
Do you have any questions, Councillor Vince?
Yeah, similar question. Page 71 of the same document. It talks about 100k for rental innovation park. What if we don't achieve this increase in rental?
Councillor's thoughts?
For sure, Councillor Vince, we will.
Any further questions?
Yeah, this last one, sorry, Chair. Page 82, this is not a political question at all, really, but it might be. How do we, it's just the £150 for plaques on benches. What was the previous charge for that?
Sorry, are we in Appendix E?
Oh, so, yeah, sorry, Chair, it's an appendix, yeah.
So could you just state what item you were asking the previous charge for?
I thought it was page 82, which I believe was still on item 10. Am I wrong? I might be wrong.
No, I got the page number. What item are you asking about a previous charge?
Oh, sorry, it's the £150 for plaques on benches.
Fine. Councillor Charles?
Thank you, Chair. Obviously the Council balances the need for charges and takes into consideration the key aspects of certain charges. So when you're looking at the memorial bench plaques, the historical position taken by this authority has been that bench plaques in particular should be placed for people of significance in the town that should be remembered. This is obviously an emotive subject, something that of course as a charge, but we are following the convention of the policy that there has been, and we want to make sure that there is an even spread of recognition of those individuals that should be celebrated at the town park, and the charge reflects that.
Thank you. Any further questions? I'm going to come to Councillor Wilkinson and then Councillor Edwards. Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you very much, Chair. My question is directed at Councillor Carter on item 11, the housing revenue account. My question is, what protection will the council provide to tenants now that you have decided to discharge your duty to the private sector?
Thank you. Just for clarification, this is where the council has accepted a duty to house a homeless applicant. I think we're all aware that there is incredible demand for housing. We have been doing our best to use your own stock and temporary accommodation. In order to increase the variety and choice, we will be looking to use the private sector. No decision has been made yet. It's what they were saying is we are going to review it, and obviously it's going to be a case of which properties suit which people best. So clearly, not everyone is going to be suited for going to the private sector, but there will be some people. We will be working on it, and of course you will be made aware of it through the usual channels.
Councillor Wilkinson, do you have any further questions?
No, I do not, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Edwards.
Thank you. I've got 3 questions. My first question relates to page 53, paragraph 9.3. It's with regard to the voluntary sector, and I'll ask the question in a moment. But I noticed in your Harlow yesterday there was a report about Harlow Council encouraging charities, voluntary sector and other non-for-profit organisations to apply for partnership grants. And there's a whole chunk in there about just a minute, supporting the town's economic and social recovery, promoting social inclusion, reducing loneliness, etc., increasing volunteering opportunities. And then I noticed that we now have on paragraph 9.3, with regard to working with the voluntary sector, the council is anxious to achieve value for money from the grants that it provides. Partners applying for financial support are required to demonstrate efficiency savings comparable to the targets that the council has to meet and work towards achieving the council's priorities. So what sort of efficiency savings are we looking for from the voluntary sector that will be applying for those particular grants? And secondly, in relation to this question, given that this is a new criteria, which is a criteria that's presumably will be accepted tonight and go to full council, and wasn't in the criteria that was advertised when this advertisement was put out to the voluntary sector, how will that be managed?
Thank you, Councillor. That's the first Councillor Charles.
Thank you, Chair. Forgive me, as Councillor Edwards will remember, last year we held consultation with the third sector organisations that typically access the partnership grants, and we designed the partnership grant specification directly with them. I sat with the voluntary sector, took their views on how we wanted to take forward the partnership grants. The themes that they identified, typically around addressing social exclusion and so on, were born out of those discussions, and there was an acceptance and something that we said when we set out that we wanted the partnership grants to deliver, that in order to increase the impact of those grants that we awarded to those organisations. They have been fully involved throughout this process. We do these things in partnership. We have a two-way conversation with the third sector as part of this administration. That wasn't a thing under the previous administration.
Councillor Evans, you suggested 2 questions.
I've got 2 more questions. Page 61, where you are, sorry, apologies. Page 61, where you're identifying new potential savings, you talk about £55,000 being saved from the community safety team's budget, which I understand relates to a management role. Could you tell me what arrangements would be put in place to ensure that that service is managed effectively?
Yes, I'm going to come to Councillor Charles.
That has already been delivered. The management, of course, and operational decisions fall with our colleagues in SMB, who, when sadly that management post became vacant, reorganised the team. Faith, as you know, is one of the caseworkers, and that team works closely with Essex Police to deal with the community safety issues in the town. There was a broader discussion being had with the Essex Police Fire and Crime Commissioner about how we deploy our community safety work going forward. And we're having discussions with a range of partners across Essex in order that we work collaboratively with organisations to not only address antisocial behaviour in the town, but the wider crime issues that we all are aware of. But the management steps were acted upon straight away, because obviously the community safety teams is a priority area for this administration.
So will it be possible to see a management structure as to how that's matured? Would it be possible
Yeah,
to see
the management structure is up to March this year, was published on the council website, and the updated version will be put in place at the end of that cycle. And Councillor Charles wants to add further clarifications.
I would just add that the SMB senior management team obviously conducted a review and have added in additional management into the council to help deliver our priorities. Assistant directors now sit within the council's administrative function. That was a positive step forward, and it shows that we are pump priming the agenda around our corporate strategy.
to receive the management structure?
Councillor, do you have a third question?
I've got a third question which relates to page 81 and 82. It's about the charges at Harlow Museum. There appear to be some new charges. One, it says schools guided tours, non-Harlow schools for child, a new charge of £3 per child, and the self-guided tour, non-Harlow schools per child of £2 per child. Are there any charges at all for Harlow school children?
I took the decision not to charge Harlow school children. Let me repeat that. I took the decision not to charge Harlow school children. I think it is entirely reasonable to charge schools from outside Harlow to access our facilities.
When they come back, you talk in terms, then there's on the next page, there's something called outreach sessions, whatever they are. And they're talking about Harlow schools where there's a new charge of £2.50 per child there. And for non-Harlow school it's £3.25 per child. For loan boxes, whatever they are, there's a new charge of £18. And for talks and lectures, there's a new charge of £4. So just going back to the children, so in terms of that £2.50, is there anything there to, any discretion as far as people on low income are concerned? And how will that charge be administered? And what is that charge for?
The charge for the outreach session covers the cost of the education officer.
So is there any discretion for children on low income?
The position taken by this council is that we will look to minimise any impact on any group that may be struggling with the cost of living. clearly in the application of these fees, we look at that very seriously. The outreach sessions cover the cost of the education officer who is an active member of staff.
So therefore, is there, at the moment, you say you're going to look at that, so at the moment, is there any process whereby persons are on low income or family are on low income, or if the schools will recognise that they've got children that are on low income, where it's possible to either waive those, where it would be possible to waive those fees?
Of course, there is regular signposting of these sorts of matters, and the relationship that we have with schools, we always take that under advisement.
So do we have a clear procedure for that at the moment?
Of course we do.
And it's worth mentioning that, again, as Councillor Charles said, any visitors to the museums or any of our sites of that nature, if they come from Harlow, they're not paying for them. Outreach is where our organisations may go into schools.
Yeah.
And that is not an obligatory function of this council. And so it is typical that schools will look to possibly look into a whole range of outreach programs that are out there. And what we're doing is actually expanding the provision of outreach. And that is the aim of that, and the school budgets take account of this kind of thing as well.
We know that school budgets are under pressure. We also know that families on low income are under pressure, and we're going to put in a block charge of £2.50 per child. Now, if we have a process, would it be possible for me to see that process, please?
We have a process, and you'll be able to see it. Do you have any further questions, Councillor?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, I'll look around the room for any further questions. Okay, comments? Councillor Danvers.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not going to rehearse what I'm going to say next week, but I'll just say this for the time being. When you took over last May, you had a surplus of council finances in the general fund of £250,000. We've heard tonight that in fact the reserves that you inherited in fact have been described as excessive, which I find quite interesting. We've heard tonight that the discretionary fund is so well served that it will actually last for another 6 years. All of those things were set up by the previous administration. Now we hear all of this tonight, and I fear for Harlow Council finances in the next 3 years. With the massive bribe that's being offered, I know the elections in May are going to be very difficult for you given the political circumstances. Defending 6 seats out of 11 will put you in jeopardy of possibly losing control of this local authority. The lack of council tax, and I don't know which school other people went to, but I went to Burt Mill School, and 160,000 plus 320,000 plus 480,000 doesn't equal 900,000. It equals £960,000 that this local authority will be losing in the next 3 years. And this flippant attitude towards the council finances I find rather alarming. What I also coincidentally find alarming, Chair, is also the flippant attitude towards contracts. The local authority was locked into a 30-year contract with the crematoria by the previous Tory administration. Being suggested that it could just be torn up, I find very alarming indeed.
Any further comments from the opposition at this time? Councillor Vince.
I'll be equally swift because I don't want to preempt what I'm going to say next week. But I mean, I think looking at the document, particularly the comments on page 24 of the document, there are clearly a lot of uncertainties moving forward, both in terms of the funding as an authority will get from central government and other pressures as outlined on that particular page of the document. And I have huge concerns about this budget proposed and the effect it will have on the long-term stability of council finances. Mr. Councillor Danvers, has stolen my thunder in terms of doing the maths on it. It is nearly £1 million, and that's if you base it on a simple interest opposed to compound interest. We'll lose over a 3-year period, and that's going to. Then from then on, you'll have that gap of £480,000. I don't feel that the answers given to me by members of the administration or non-answers have made me feel a lot better, and I have huge concerns about this, which I will obviously air in more detail next week. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any further comments? Councillor regulars.
I've just got a comment with regard to the community safety. I do find it slightly alarming we seem to be stripping out a level of management at a time when you look at crime figures across the town. There's substantial increases right the way across the board. I mean, one's only got to look at the rolling programme for crime over the last 12 months, for the 12 months to December, from December 2020 to December 2021. And so, I mean, whilst on the one hand I can understand it in terms of if one was saying, well, okay, we're going to be looking at the way that we, by all means, look at the way we're going to be managing our services, etc., etc. But when that's identified as a savings, rather than saying, this is the amount that we're spending on, the amount that we're spending in terms of community safety, and we're going to extract out £55,000, given the demand overall and the concerns overall, as were reflected in your Harlow article this evening, and as are reflected, let's say, in these crime statistics, I do find slightly concerning to say the least. Certainly, given your statements of very much being on the side of law and order, etc., etc. And one of the major things that people are very concerned about in this town is law and order, is antisocial behaviour, and is the partnerships, etc., that we have with the police.
Thank you. Are there any further comments? Councillor Swords?
Yeah, just very brief comments to draw out some of the very good things in the budget in terms of regeneration that I think will be welcomed across party, I would very much hope. But I'm surprised that they haven't been mentioned at all yet this evening. First being a new combined planning and regeneration team to finally get on and deliver the town centre regeneration. Second, Councillor Vince did mention the estate renewal fund, which will do great things across the town. There will be a rolling fund year on year to do great things across the town. Councillor Durkner asked me earlier on about council house building. This budget invests more money in council house building than this council has spent in decades on council house building, and I'm sure that will be strongly welcomed. Ultimately, across the board, I think in terms of regeneration, it is a budget that will get things done, and therefore I look forward to them being welcomed across parties.
Thank you, Chair. I wasn't going to take part in the debate because the tradition is that we actually deal with the information, but yet again, the Conservatives have tried to use this as yet another ploy to try to plug their so-called success rate. But actually all we have heard tonight is secrets, lies and bribes. The idea that you've got all this money buried away in Brian Keane's office that's going to build all these council houses is nothing more than a fundamental lie. Everybody knows that. What you have to do is you have to go and borrow the money. You don't have the money. You've got no inclination at the moment of the money. So as far as we're concerned, in relation to everything that we've heard from the ridiculous statements made by the cabinet member for so-called regeneration, is that it's secret, lies and bribes.
Thank you, Councillor Turkey. I would ask in future we keep Mr. Keane's office out of this. He holds a very esteemed office and done a lot of good work for this council. So I'm going to just sum up a few key points here. I shan't go into depth because as is the tradition, as you rightly pointed out, Councillor Durkin, we save our political points and jousting until next week.
Childish.
Suffice to say, I'm very proud of these achievements that are outlined in this set of papers. I pay tribute to the officers who have worked extremely hard behind the scenes to enact our political agenda. It's a political agenda because we are in politics and we were elected on a political agenda. But the officers have acted with impartiality and they have acted within the regulations that are set out. And I will point out, as I do every year, that we are unable at a local government level to pass an unbalanced budget without the approval of the Section 151 officer. So any intimation to the contrary that we may be moving an unbalanced budget is wholly unjustified. And I won't stoop as far to say it was lies, but let's just say it's a little bit far from the truth to say it's unbalanced. And there's a problem with the budget.
Never said it was unbalanced, Jim.
I'm glad.
Well, no one said this.
We hear lots of things.
It's a fear for the future, not that you've had.
Sorry, Councillor Tenants. I gave you ample time to give your opinion on some of that now. So, I'd like to thank the finance team, I'd like to thank all the officers and the cabinet members that have worked very hard in their respective areas to pull together this fantastic set of budget papers to bring alive our corporate strategy that will transform Harlow over the next 3 years, and we'll also see some exciting things developing in the forthcoming months. So what I'm going to ask is all the recommendations listed in reports 9 through to 15 be approved. Do I see all those in favour? Yep. And I take there's no abstentions or votes against. So that is moved. Thank you very much. We now move to item 16, HGGT, proposed future governance arrangements, as outlined on pages 282 to 309 of the pack. And I look to Councillor Harlow to propose that motion.
Thank you, Chair. I formally propose it. Members will be...
before you continue, can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Swords. And thank you, Councillor Harlow.
Thank you. Members will be familiar with the Harlow Gilston Garden Town. It's been operating as an umbrella organisation for the last 5 years, overseeing the development of various policies and bringing forward overseeing various sites. It's been operating with the 5 member local authorities under an informal agreement, but as the group moves towards delivering or overseeing the delivery of elements of the garden town, the general view of the 5 is that we need a more formal agreement in place. The report that's before you outlines all of the options that were considered, and they have been considered in detail, and the favoured option is the joint committee, which is broadly a formal legal agreement between the 5. But what I'm asking, or what we're asking for agreement tonight, is a framework to begin the discussions, because they're going to be very detailed, very protracted, and so that is the report which I can support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harlow. Are there any questions on this report? Okay, any comments? Okay, can I see all those in favour of recommendations A and B set out on page 282 of the report? Those in agreement, thank you. None against. Right, let's move on then to item 17, approval of the London Road North LDO amendment as set out on page 310 to 360 of the pack. Councillor Swords, are you proposing?
Yeah, formally proposed.
And can I take a second for that, please? I think Councillor Harlow there. And Councillor Swords.
Yeah, just very briefly, it's obviously the most tantalising report on the agenda this evening, because it will, massively help, as the report sets out, in moving the delivery of the innovation park forward. And it is a fantastic LDO, and I look forward to inviting you all to the innovation park when the LDO has done its job, and we have many more fantastic developments there.
Thank you. Any questions on that item? Any comments? Okay, can I move to the votes? All those in support of recommendations A through to C on pages 310 of the report. Those in favour? Thank you. None against? Okay, we now move to the award of the framework agreement, online law library services, page 361 to 365 of the pack. Councillor Gunn.
Thank you. This report is one example of that.
Did you propose that?
Oh, sorry.
That's right. I'm very keen to get them onto this very exciting item. And do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Charles. Councillor Gunn, over to you.
Thanks, apologies for getting up. This report is one example of the increased drive by the Council's governance team to secure and drive value using collective bargaining power and processes in line with the key strategic theme within the recently adopted corporate strategy of being an efficient council. The report proposes that members support the award of a 4-year contract, provides important library resources for in-house legal teams across Essex and the wider area to assist with the provision of timely and accurate legal advice. Across the member authorities, including Harlow, this approach has led to total savings of nearly £1 million over 3 years, a good example of the benefits of deepening shared service provision. Harlow Council has taken the lead in this procurement process on behalf of 28 local authority legal teams. In addition to offering a significant discount from list prices for services, the supplier has committed to providing educational outreach facilities, together with work experience opportunities and volunteer hours. This will help to improve the service local authorities offer to their residents, including here in Harlow. Members will see that market engagement is tested, best value and social value factors, as well as price and product offering, resulting in the recommendation to award the framework, which I endorse.
Thank you, Councillor. Any questions on this item? Comments? Okay, I'll move to the vote on item on recommendations, A and B on page 361 of that report. All in favour? Okay, that's carried. Right, let's move to item 19, which is the energy procurement framework renewal, pages 366 to pages 361 of the pack. And I'll turn again to Councillor Gunn for that. Councillor Gunn, do you propose that?
I do.
Seconders? Councillor Carter, thank you. Councillor Gunn.
Thank you. This report is timely with energy prices at an all-time high following a volatile year in the wholesale energy market. Domestic and commercial energy consumers are feeling the effects of this through inflated energy rates, and several energy companies having proven unable to absorb higher prices. Since the 2008-9 financial year, Harlow Council has used a flexible purchasing method by which a framework provider continually tracks changes in the wholesale energy market and procures blocks of energy when conditions are favourable. When all of the energy is procured for the following year, the Council receives this at a fixed term rate for 12 months, protecting the Council and its leaseholders from volatility in the energy market. It provides an opportunity to enter into long-term agreements to buy energy at lower rates than short-term contracts, providing stability and fairer prices. The current energy procurement framework is due for renewal after the 31st of March 2023, and a review of the contract has already been undertaken to assess its performance, assessing it on criteria, financial savings, handling queries, added value and carbon reduction. Positive outcomes were found on all criteria, and it is therefore recommended that the Council renew the contract up to 2026. This will help the Council continue to provide value for money for its energy supply contracts, protecting not just itself but leaseholders too. Indeed, the reason this report is being brought forward at the earliest possible opportunity is so that we can secure energy supply contracts early to help obtain the best prices possible for the Council's affected tenants and operational buildings. I hope it will be supported tonight.
Thank you. Questions? I see Councillor Daniels.
Thank you, Chair. Hypothetically, next year, could this contract be torn up by a new administration?
Let us try and legal officer. We may have to come back to you and answer in writing. We'll come back to you in writing.
I have to come back to you in writing on that.
Well, I was told the answer is no.
We don't deal with what we think.
But I'll wait for the answer.
We've got to be in a right old pickle. What we deal with is the actual answer. Are there any further questions? No? Okay. Comments? Right, okay. I ask that we vote on recommendations A and B of page 366 of this report. All those in favour? No. Okay, no one against. That's carried. Item 20, communications from committees, working groups, parties and panels. There are none. Move to item 21, minutes of panels, working groups. They're listed there, A through to D. There's a noting, are they noted? Actually, as through to item E on the page. Take item E as well as noted. And then under matters of urgent business, I have one. I'm obliged to say the following. We do have one item of urgent business. This item is confidential, and I'm proposing it is taken in private session on the grounds that it is likely to involve the disclosure of exempt information under paragraph 3 of part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972. Do I have a proposer? Thank you, Councillor Sewell. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Harlow. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed. Okay. Therefore, I would like to say thank you very much for the attendance.